Hi, I'm David. Welcome to LeisureBit, and today we're going to be covering CCTV, the different options and why. Firstly, do I need CCTV? Secondly, which CCTV is best for you? Thirdly, which I chose and why. If you're after the slides from this video, there's a link in the description. Why have CCTV in your van? With the rising popularity and value of motorhomes, campervans and caravans, and the increased cost of living, the risk of theft and break-ins also increased, making security measures like CCTV even more important. Also remember, consider other security measures in addition, such as alarm systems, physical barriers, and also steering locks, pedal locks, all of those things to provide a comprehensive protection for your vehicle. Think about layering security, of which CCTV is just one part of it. Another interesting stat which I found out was vehicle property crime decreased by 14% in areas with visible CCTV. That's quite interesting, so being able to see cameras and things, perhaps even worthwhile putting the stickers and warning labels on as well, can actually reduce the likelihood of you becoming a target. So why have CCTV in your van? It's the deterrent from theft, reduction in crime, as we just covered there about reducing the likelihood of your vehicle becoming a target, protection of your valuables, so the things you keep inside of your vehicle, security in unmonitored areas. There are areas we take our vans that aren't covered by other CCTV, so it's fantastic to have your own to cover that. And also, of course, evidence collection in the event of an issue. When criminals know they're more likely to get caught on camera, they may think twice before targeting your campervan, motorhome or caravan. When considering CCTV options for your campervan or motorhome, there are several types to choose from. Each of them have their own features and benefits, so it's about picking the one that works for you and is right for you. We'll run through a brief overview of the most common different CCTV options available and the pros and cons of each one. Let's start with the common types of CCTV. So we have basic single camera security systems. Then you've got multi-camera systems, which is more than one camera. Then you've got more sophisticated systems, so it might be IP systems, it could be bespoke broadcast systems. There's various different types of bespoke CCTV technology. And then you can get Wi-Fi enabled cameras. You can pick these up pretty cheap. You know, even some I've seen start from £10. And then you've got battery and solar powered cameras to consider. Let's move on now to how we're going to power it. So one of the key considerations when deciding what to go for is, how are you going to power it? Are you going to power it from the leisure battery? From the vehicle battery? We need to be a little bit careful on that so that we don't draw down the power in the vehicle battery and not be able to start it. Are we going to power it from its own battery? You know, is it replaceable, or is it the rechargeable type? Or is it solar powered, which typically then combines an internal battery and a solar panel in an attempt to keep that topped up? How is that going to perform in the winter? Be mindful of parasitic drain. What I mean by parasitic drain is when you're running things like CCTV, even alarms, trackers, all of those things, they all consume a little bit of electricity. And on face value, you look at it and you think, well, it's not actually consuming a lot, it's consuming a few milliamps. But time actually mounts up, and very quickly you're into amp hours. And then amp hours start eating away at your battery. So just need some consideration for that, especially if you want to leave it on all the time. So you need to make sure you're sized appropriately with a method of recharging and topping up, so you don't either run your vehicle or your leisure battery down. Next to consider is the storage options. So there's a couple of different types to explore. So the first one is quite a popular one in this day and age, which is cloud storage. This is basically where we store the CCTV footage on the internet in a cloud provider. Now, unless you're using an existing provider, you typically have to pay a subscription or pay some payment for this. Nothing in life comes for free on that. Somebody's got to pay to store it somewhere. Some of them are offered as free, but there's often some tie into advertising or other data usage. And what I mean by data usage is your personal data usage there. So very carefully check the terms and conditions if it looks like you are getting something for free. So some are based on storage capacity, which is your traditional, as you would consider for local storage. So it's how many gigabytes or terabytes of storage you will require, which is basically how long do you want to keep the footage for and how much you're recording. Are you recording continuously, or are you just recording when there's an event happens? Some charge by the number of cameras you've got connected. So if you've got one, you'll pay so much. If you've got 3 or 4, you'll pay 3 or 4 times the amount. Sometimes there's a discount for multiple cameras, and others are unlimited, similar to the Ring service, where you can add as many as you want, just keep adding them in, and it's all covered within that single payment each month. Typical prices for storage seem to range from maybe £30 a year up to several £100 a year. So the benefits of the cloud storage are you can access your footage from anywhere, providing you've got a reliable internet connection. Obviously watch out there, because your mobile provider may give you only a certain capacity, or there may be a fair use on, and if you're streaming multiple cameras all the time, it can rack up quite a lot of data. You've got ease of storage capacity scalability. It's typically just paying an incremental fee rather than actually going and having to buy another physical device to put into it. You don't need to invest in expensive storage devices. It's all handled for you by the cloud storage provider. Thinking purely on physical theft, your CCTV footage is safer in the cloud because it's secured behind your login details, your username, password, passcodes, and even biometrics on some of them. That's stored out the way and it's not in your vehicle. So if somebody has attempted to break in, they can't just get in and steal your equipment, because it's recorded up to the point that that equipment's taken and stored safely on the cloud. There's obviously some considerations you need to be aware of in terms of limitations. First is internet dependency. This only works if you've got a reliable internet connection, an appropriate bandwidth for uploading these images and videos. There's also the bandwidth consumption to think about. You can burn through a heck of a lot of data streaming things up to the cloud, because basically you're streaming video. If you're doing it by event, it's much more restricted, the amount of information you're sending up. But if you're constantly streaming multiple cameras, you can really cut through your data usage. Double check as well if you're on an unlimited plan, because they typically have a fair use policy. As we know in life, resources aren't unlimited, and unlimited by name doesn't necessarily mean you can just absolutely throw everything at it. Most people, I don't think this has been a problem for, but just for awareness. Also consider the long-term costs. Finally, and very importantly, is privacy and data ownership. What's really important to do before signing up for any form of cloud service is check on the ownership of the data when it's loaded up, because you may actually be giving access rights or ownership of your recorded footage to the cloud provider. Privacy as well. Think about what's recorded and it's being stored on the internet. Somebody could get access to that. Is that going to be a problem? Typically, cameras on the outside of the van, the limited exposure, but inside the van, you could literally get exposure. And check the device. Where's your data being stored? Is it being stored in the UK? Is it being stored in Europe, America? Is it being stored in the rest of the world? And are you confident with where that data's been stored? Local storage is where we actually store the footage from the CCTV or the DVR on a physical memory device or hard disk within the vehicle. So it's physically located in the vehicle. This is your classic CCTV where everything's recorded onto the system itself. The storage types tend to be either SD cards, micro SD cards, or hard drives. Using local storage over cloud storage has several benefits. Firstly, it lowers the cost. You don't have to pay monthly fees for mobile subscriptions. Secondly, faster access. There's no internet dependency, you're connecting to it locally. And thirdly, you have full control and ownership. The limitations of local storage are you're limited to your storage capacity. You can only store as much footage as you have for the size of the device you've put in there. Typically what you do with CCTV is when you reach capacity you start overwriting your older data and replace that one. So it depends how big the carousel is, essentially. You know, have you got a carousel that gives you a day's worth of continuous recording, a week's worth, a month's worth? You know, how large is that? And how important is it? Because what you don't want to happen is to have left your van, something happen, and the incident's been recorded over because you didn't have enough capacity. There's a higher maintenance cost. You need to take care of the installation, the operation, and the storage devices. You need to look after them, make sure you know, they're reformatted when necessary. There's always a risk of data corruption on storage devices, and it's dealing with that if it happens. And then finally, you do have a lower security in that the physical security of the device, because the device can be stolen with the storage in it, whether it's a standalone camera stuck to the side of your van or whether it's a DVR inside. If somebody pinches the camera or the DVR or the equipment, your footage is gone with it. One really smart option is a hybrid approach where you've got local and cloud storage. With that you can get the benefits of both. And it's fantastic having local storage if there's not a viable cloud connection available, so if the internet's not very good. However, the cost of having both typically is driven up because you've got the costs of local storage along with your remote and your bandwidth costs for those as well. That's our different options. So we covered cloud, local and hybrid, which is cloud and local storage. The option I chose was hybrid, cloud and local storage. In terms of installation options, for cameras specifically, we can fix them to the side of the van using a magnet. We could put it on a bracket. We could drill a hole and permanently mount it through. We could mount it internally looking out. Or we could go with a full install and make it as if it was always intended to be there. So one of the choices to make is, do you want to do a temporary or a permanent install? And that depends on when you want it for. You might not want cameras on all the time. I made the decision to do a permanent install for two reasons really. Number one, everything's fixed in and there's nothing to forget, so I can get it running automatically and not need to worry about putting a camera out. Knowing me, it would be the middle of the night or something and I'd suddenly think, drat, I forgot to put the camera out. Doesn't work for me having to remember it, and I've tried to minimise the amount of effort need to do on each trip, so it would be one extra thing to do. Plus you've got to store the gear somewhere in the van when you're not using it, then you've got to go and stick it out on the van. So works for some people, for me it doesn't, but it's a great option to consider. You don't have to go to the trouble then of physically installing, drilling holes or fitting mountain brackets and things like that to the van, so well worth considering. But as I say, I went for a fully installed option. A couple of things to consider as well, and this is probably going into the dark side now of things that can happen, but I just wanted to cover them anyway. One of the downsides of CCTV, especially more recent things with Wi-Fi and even some with mobile network connectivity, is you can get hold of, and when I say you can, criminals can get hold of very cheap devices which pretty much render them useless. You can pick up Wi-Fi jammers for as little as £10, sometimes even cheaper, and they can be used to pretty much jam up any form of Wi-Fi camera system or any other Wi-Fi communications. They are illegal to use without the system owner's permission, but that pretty much knocks your Wi-Fi cameras out, and you just need that in the vicinity of them. The other thing which is seems to be a growing issue is cellular mobile jamming. Completely illegal to use in the UK. It blocks the cellular signal. Now that's not only an issue for your CCTV, it's also for your trackers. It pretty much stops them from communicating back. It's a very serious offence to do this, but of course it's a serious offence to steal things in the first place. People who are looking to use those probably aren't going to really care that it's an offence, but that pretty much stops the remote communications. Hence the hybrid option So if somebody gets disturbed trying to break into your vehicle, you may well then have the evidence recorded locally. Whereas if it was just purely a remote session, you're not going to have it if somebody's using these tools. The price of these ranges from about £30 upwards. Some of the cleverer ones are around £1,000. Again, not something you want to be buying, but just for awareness of it, of how simple it is to actually knock out some of the devices and communications we have. That was one of the reasons for going for the hybrid approach. The cameras aren't connected on Wi-Fi, they're connected with wires. The cameras are fixed on. Yes, they could be knocked off, you know, somebody could come and smash them off, but it's more complex than a semi-permanent install. They're well fixed on, just really to cover all bases there, local and hybrid. The other thing as well to be aware of is the laws around CCTV and also the Data Protection Act. The main laws governing the installation and use of CCTV is covered by the Data Protection Act 1998, but this only applies to businesses and organisations, not to domestic properties. It's crucial that people recognise that distinction. If you're concerned about a company's use of CCTV, that's a matter for the Information Commissioner's Office. The other thing to consider, for all cases, but most especially for internet and Wi-Fi, always assume somebody may have access to this and be able to see it. You need to be especially careful with cameras inside the van, where you may be having private conversations and the audio's being recorded, or filming things that might not want to be broadcast over the internet. This is especially important where children are concerned, along with the potential legal issues. A selection there of the different security cameras which connect via Wi-Fi that are readily available. There's then the mobile DVRs, so these are typically installed. These particular ones pictured are ones that work on what's known as analog high definition, or AHD, where you connect the cameras via wires and they actually send the video transmissions as an analog signal through the cable rather than a fully digital one which might send it over Ethernet, for example. Then you get the combined systems. These are quite popular, where you buy a monitor and it has a memory card slot and often comes with the cameras, so you fit that and install it and away you go. And then there's the specific CCTV cameras which connect into a DVR, such as the ones pictured there. We have 3 of the ones in the top left are very similar to that one, but there's all different shapes and sizes. You can get wireless ones as well which feed back. As we've covered earlier, the reason for not using wireless is just that we don't get the signal jamming problems. What did I choose and why? So I've alluded to some of this already. I decided on a fixed system with both local and internet connection. I chose the mobile DVR and analog HD cameras, which are permanently installed on the van. This gave me the best of both. The original one I chose, and when I say the original, there is a little bit of a story around this. I chose the mobile DVR. I found this particular one and I thought that meets my needs. It was quite reasonably priced as well. It was under £70 and it had 4 channels, 1080p video and apparently Wi-Fi and remote access. And I chose these AHD cameras, the 1080p ones, and I've mounted them on each side and the rear. I'll likely install another one on the front in the future. I haven't for now because the 2 cameras on the side actually face forward and the one on the back faces out. So I have tried positioning, but I've not been happy with where I put them. I did think about putting some in the front grille, but we'll cover that off in the future. Quite happy with the 3 cameras I've got on so far. They give a good coverage, wide enough but not ridiculously wide, so you can see what's coming up, and there's not really too many blind spots either. However, things didn't quite go to plan. Unfortunately, it wasn't as it was described. It was a low model and it didn't have the Wi-Fi or the GPS and thus no remote capabilities. The seller was really helpful in resolving the issue. They weren't aware it was a different model. They did withdraw it from sale as well, and they did offer me a discount which brought the price of the unit down to £35. Bargain. I've had it installed and it's been working and it's been really useful for the past 9 months. However, whilst it has worked, I really wanted the remote access capability. So I've ordered a new mobile DVR, which we'll cover in a future video, and swap the one out we've installed here for the new one. And what lesson have I learned? Buy cheap, buy twice. I'm pleased I bought the separate MDVR and the cameras, as it means I just need to replace the one component on the system. I don't need to replace the whole lot. Let's see how we get on with the new one. In the next episode, we'll look at the install of the one I bought and the new one. Don't forget to check that out. That'll be out very soon. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful, and we'll catch you for the next bit. Bye!